more than half of the world's population lives in cities, and not all of them have the way we're used to seeing them. Today I'm going to show you the kind of cities that are, it's hard to believe, and we're going to start with a city on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean here. Not far from Lagos, there used to be a tiny fishing village, and now it's part of Lagos. Although it's actually a whole separate town built on mounds of compacted garbage. The houses stand on stilts just above one of the most unusual places in the world. The world's most poverty-stricken. The world's largest slum built on the water. To me, the Venice painting is like something out of post-apocalypse. No one knows exactly how many people live here. Some say hundreds of thousands. Others say it's much more. The official census puts the number 250,000 people, but many are convinced those numbers have been underestimated. To glean the extent of the problem from the people encountering this place, can't help but one has to wonder how the people here manage to survive, because there's nowhere to grow food. There are no trees anywhere. To gather firewood. Life is really very hard. These people survive in almost unfit conditions. The birth rate is very high here. A man can have 3 or 4 wives. He has 5 or 7 children with each of them, from one woman alone. The country is very rich in natural resources, but these natural resources are more profitable to sell abroad, where they pay more for them than the local poor people. The wealth of the places, the people here are hardly divided. Nigeria's capital city was born. It's one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas in the world in terms of slum size. It's also one of the world's fastest growing slums. Has its own name, Makoko. They're officially, many people call Black Venice. The minimum number of police teachers per capita make the slums are an unenviable place to live. The level of medical care is not to mention the level of medical care. Add to that terrible, unsanitary conditions. Perhaps then you'll understand why there are so few old people here. If you look closely, there are almost none. Elderly people. The vast majority of people die at a relatively young age. Many because of HIV viruses, human immunodeficiencies, others because of malaria, hepatitis, meningitis, typhoid fever, intestinal infections, and so on. All of these is not getting proper treatment, and it's leading to that in the slums. Only 5% of the population. Only 5% of the population. There used to be a small fishing village, used to provide seafood for all of Lagos. But now the water off the coast has become polluted and is no longer suitable. However, if you sail away from the town, you can catch some fish. You can catch some fish if you're lucky, and that's why fishing is the main occupation of the inhabitants of the water slums. The rest of them every day swim to earn money from the water. There's a foul odor. A thick layer of sewage collects around the pilings of hundreds of illegal shacks, according to statistics. Each of the floating houses, on average, an average of 6 to 10 people live here. Migrant laborers from all corners of West Africa don't even own a house here, they just rent it. Houses as the main means of transportation for the locals still have wooden boats. Every family has one. And the kids come up with even more interesting means of transportation. It's also used for fishing and serves as outlets where women sell food, water, and household goods. There are even floating schools built out of plastic barrels, sometimes destroyed by storms. Children in some areas are left without for years without learning anything new. And some parents can afford to send their children to neighboring neighborhoods to other overcrowded floating. The government is not providing free water to Mako residents. The only way to get drinking water is to buy it from vendors who get it from wells. All the waste and sewage is released directly into the ocean, and then there are kids splashing around in that water. But even in a place like this, people are trying to have some kind of fun in houses that have where there's electricity. You can find LCD TVs and even the new PlayStation 2 generation anyway. There are barber shops for these new ones and even a small cafeteria. And these slum has one big plus. It's got a pretty low crime rate compared to the rest of the city, and there's no utility bills because they just don't have those services many times. Moving on to the next unusual city. El Ahmadiyya, a city that looks like it's been photoshopped. An old town built at a time when height had a strategic importances, or Medina's altitude 1,400 meters to live in houses on the edge of the cliff. Though it may be scary, but the view from there, they offer a stunning view of the valley. The city was founded as early as the 3rd BC. Since then, it hasn't grown in size at all, for obvious reasons. For obvious reasons, there's nowhere to grow. The building doesn't have levitation, and therefore, as it was thousands of years ago, kilometers long, 500 meters long and 500 meters wide, it still is. For a long time, access to the township was only possible through a narrow staircase, a passage carved in stone. Now, however, the good road has been built. The town was designed to be an impregnable fortress, so the various nations and states of the region have always tried to seize this, a great stronghold and multi-regional city. Muslims here, Muslims and Christians get along just fine. The population is about 11,000 people. It's got everything you need for a normal life: stores, restaurants, police, and other services. Nevertheless, due to the impossibility of population growth and due to limited territories that do not to build new houses, the indigenous inhabitants are often forced to move out of the city. Mostly the locals earn their living from agriculture and a little bit of tourism. The residents of Elamedia are trying to register the town on the registry of the UNESCO World Heritage Site in order to attract more tourists. The next unusual town on our list is La Rinconada, which also looks very fantastic, like something out of a movie. This lost in the mountains town is what many has called hell on earth. It's located in Peru on an extinct volcano, and this city is not just high above sea level. It's ranked number 1 in the world. The world's highest altitude city on planet Earth, more than 5 kilometers above sea level. It's like having a city was located on Mount Elbrus. Imagine what it must be like: oxygen deprivation for the local. The atmosphere at these altitudes is very rarefied. The atmosphere at such altitudes is very rarefied, has a significant impact on life expectancy. But oxygen deprivation, although, is one of the major problems of this city. But it's not the only one. The climate here, it's harsh. It rains a lot in the summer and dry in the winter. And the average annual temperature is only 1 degree of warmth. Unfriendly conditions about 30,000 people. In fact, 30,000 was estimated in 2009. Since then, the population has increased dramatically. What draws people here is the answer: wages. It's a mining town, and there's a lot of gold deposits here. That's why the gold rush has brought in a lot of workers who can make as much as $200 a month. Doesn't sound like much. A lot. But for this country, the wages are not, and people are willing to put up with harsh working conditions, harsh climate, and lack of comfort. Lack of normal control by the government has made mining chaotic. There is no administration in the town. Anarchy reigns. Almost all the mining companies operating here do so in a non-formal way. And there are no safety regulations, and there's no safety regulations to speak of, so the miners are constantly at great risk to their lives, and then there are many precedents here. Gold is mined with outdated, the precious metals are extracted from the ore is extracted with the help of mercury, which is why. This toxic metal has poisoned the local land, water, and air, leading to the large number of people who are poisoned by this mercury. Eventually, due to oxygen deprivation, mercury poisoning, harsh living and working conditions on average. People here live to be 50 years old. The floor is 20 years less than the national average, exacerbated by an off-the-charts crime rate. There is a police force here, but officers only come here on short-term assignments. The government ignores the lawlessness. The anarchy that's going on here is ruled by the city, by gold mining companies who aren't much concerned about improving the conditions of the miners and improving the towns. I think you can see why they call this town hell on earth. In spite of all the hopelessness going on, there's no shortage of people in town who want to live and to work here because it's possible for them. The only chance of working for any substantial money. We move on to the next unusual, the township before you. The narrowest city in the world. This is a bird's eye view of the city. Of the city from a bird's eye view. Quickly went viral online. Some people even thought it was computer generated. People are wondering why anyone would want to live in such a narrow community when there are so many more. There are much better places to live. Well, why not live such an atmospheric place that looks like it's out of some fantasy? The city can't grow wide. It's hindered by the mountains. The narrowest part of Yangtze is only 30 meters wide. 30 meters, and the widest part of the city is about 300 meters. In addition to the extreme narrowest part of the city has another peculiarity, since land is a valuable commodity. In this area, most of apartment buildings are located right on the riverbank. They are built on tall, thin pilings to protect people's homes from possible flooding if the water level rises. The city is nestled between the steep mountains in China's Yunnan province and is home to about 40,000 people. Infrastructure and paved roads, a 2-kilometer tunnel through the mountains keeps the city alive. Tourists also contribute to the city's economy, coming here to see for themselves these unrealistic views as if from parallel universe. Although until recently, there weren't not so many. But the internet promotion has improved the situation. Strangely enough, bridges. There aren't many. Though there's no city more in need of them. It's hard to think of one. It's a mild, no cold winters almost all year round. It's warm, and it rains a lot. That's why many locals earn their living by growing rice. The rest of the residents work on the railroad or catering to the tourist industry. However, the town is not what you would call affluent, all because of its inaccessibility even though railroads. In addition, new permanent residents hardly ever don't understand why they would want to live in such a cramped and dangerous place. Because of the frequent floods that have caused people have died here. The river during floods rises so high that it can flood not only the lower floors, but also the piles. The piles on which the houses stand are not only not save the houses, but they can collapse. The indigenous people don't even think about leaving. Their ancestors lived here hundreds of years ago. It's definitely atmospheric. The views are amazing. Hopefully this place won't be abandoned as time goes on. Here we go. Another Chinese city, Chongqing, the world's largest megacity. Which, as they joke on the internet, no one knows more than the truth in that joke. Despite its status as the largest population center on the planet, almost no one outside of China, in fact, almost no one outside of China knows about it, although you've probably seen footage of it. Like this one where trains are running through the building trains running through the city. These images have become very popular on the internet. It also has one of the most complex transportation interchanges in the world. The city is growing at an obscene rate. The pace of construction is off the charts. The agglomeration of the city is the size of Austria. Everything old here is being torn down fast, and new ones are being built at an incredible rate. Entire old neighborhoods can disappear in a single day, thanks to a vast network of multi-level roads and countless skyscrapers from the future. These are the cities of the future the Chinese are building. Right now in Chongqing, they're meeting key doors of different colors, and the border between them is often clearly visible. On these rivers have an obscene number of grandiose bridges, including the world's longest arch bridge. In any other city, they'd be a major landmark. But here you might not even notice them against the backdrop. Chongqing's subway system is a story of its own. There are over 200 stations. One of them, as I've already mentioned, is in an apartment building, 6 to 8 floors. The monorail trains run right through this building, and there's no discomfort for the residents of the building. Construction of the station used noise suppression materials. Such a cyberpunk station was built due to the severe lack of space in a densely populated part of the city. Because of the lack of space in this, you can see even more cyberpunk parking lots. Remember in the movie Fast and Furious 3, Tokyo Drift had a cool parking lot, so here. It's realized even cooler like this one where the driver drives onto platform and leaves the car, and then the platform with the car rises to a certain angle and moves away. Of residents in Chongqing is off the charts. Of decency, as many as 32 million people, officially. But that's from the 2009 census. Estimated population estimate. Since then, has grown to 40 million. That's more than the entire population of Canada. Life is booming. What can't be said for the next city called, which is in the United States. It's one of the most unusual cities in the world. 73% of the city's land area is a cemetery. For every 1,000 dead people here, there's one living person. That's not an exaggeration. Everywhere you look, there are graves everywhere, which is why this city is also, they call it the City of the Dead. Everything is strewn with slabs. 1.5 million people are buried here. 1.5 million people buried here. But this city is quiet and peaceful. That's why another name it's called the City of Silence. The sheer number of dead here. The explanation is simple enough. That it's too expensive to store people on the ground. San Francisco is too expensive to store people. The authorities banned it because of what? 100 years ago, 150,000 people from the San Francisco cemeteries were moved and reburied here. Since then, many of San Francisco's dead are buried here. It's a pretty cinematic place. They've filmed all kinds of movies here. The city has 1,500 land-based residents and 1.5 million. But there's a real underground city where people live. It's called Coober. It's in the center of the Australian desert, and it's also the opal capital of the world. It's 30% of the world's opal deposits, and 97% of the world's opal mining takes place here. Here, the city's infrastructure is buried in the ground. It's hotels, stores, homes, schools, 3 churches, museums, bars, restaurants, libraries, and everything else. There's even an underground cemetery, all of which is buried under several meters of earth, and sometimes under tens of meters. The thing is that on the surface of the desert, it's hot as hell, up to 45, and before there were no air conditioners. It was unrealistic to cool the house down, and that's why it was decided to build a city underground, and all for the sake of opal mining. As a result, it turned out to be a city like in the movies about apocalypse movies. Even today, the inhabitants of the city prefer to climb as little as possible to the hot surface. By the way, the name translates to white man's slave. The homes of the town's inhabitants are large caves consisting of a living room, a kitchen, a bathroom, and 4 bedrooms. People tried to dig them out in such a way so that there would be an exit not only to the street, but also a kilometer-long mine where the mining. Underground houses always remain relatively cool. A constant temperature of 23 degrees, while surface houses can up to 40. And these houses are equipped with all the comforts of home: sewerage, electricity, running water, and internet. There are even houses with underground swimming pools. The only disadvantage of underground is the lack of windows, except for those built on the slopes. No wonder the backdrop of this town is often used as the backdrop for movies like here, Mad Max 3 and The Black Hole, about Ritik. It's also often the site spectacular sandstorms. There's speculation that the colonization of Mars will be done in the same way Cooper Petit's construction. They're even planning to conduct a training exercise to the Red Planet. Electricity in this city is generated by solar panels, but it's extremely cheap because it's a desert with the sun shining all the time. And here's the funny thing. If you buy that plot of land to dig your own house, you might accidentally get rich. So for example, when they were drilling for a hotel, they found opals worth $360,000. The town's population is small, just a couple thousand. It's only recently that foreign buildings have started to appear, thanks to air conditioning. Still, most of the residents spend most of their time underground. This unusual place attracts tourists from all over the world, on the slope of which the village is located in Alaska, where almost the entire population lives in one building, but in that building. In addition to residential apartments, there's absolutely everything: supermarket, hospital, police station, church, post office, and other necessities. And all under one roof wherever you want to go. You don't have to leave the building. And you won't want to because the climate is pretty harsh in the winter and often collapse. 100 kilometers per h, but the sun is out from November to February. On the plus side, the city has the crime rate is extremely low because all the locals know each other by sight. And it's hard to hide in case of trouble. It's hard to escape. The only way out of town is through a tunnel dug into the mountain in isolation. Neighbors here try to keep their friendships as strong as possible because in case of any problems, help from the big earth may not to arrive in time. School children often do their homework in their apartments. Teachers can communicate with the outside world via the internet. Now there are few people, just over 200, but it still has the status of a city. The government has been neglecting it. Repaired the earthquake-damaged buildings even though it promised to. That caused many people to leave, and it's only recently there's been a resurgence of investment. The city's main source of employment is the port that receives ships carrying tourists coming to see this extraordinary place and the beautiful nature. And that's it. Don't forget to like, subscribe the channel, and check out the previous 2 videos.